to the Cult of Domesticity podcast, a podcast about history, true crime, and whatever life brings us. I'm Courtney, and every week I am joined by another fascinating person. Let's see what we're going to talk about this week. Before we start, I'd like to thank all of our current patrons for helping to support the collective. Obscura, a true crime podcast, Cara Demizio, Brandon Scheck Snyder, John, Strictly Homicide podcast, Jules, a Murderific podcast, and Landshark. Thank you guys so much for your support and helping keep this going. And thank you to all the listeners. I know you support through listening, and some of us can't always support monetarily, but patrons know it's much appreciated. And there, I think, will be double podcast episodes this month as I catch up and maybe work on getting some additional surprises in there. Hey listeners, we're back again with Maxwell. He's in Australia. I'm in Ohio.
The internet is strangely better than any other time we've ever recorded when we were on the same continent.
I know. I know, it's crazy. It's because my laptop hates Wi-Fi. That's my goal, is eventually to get a new one. But yeah. How's Australia? I know last time we talked for the Trove, you were excited about Halloween or the lack of Halloween in Australia and pumpkin spice things.
Oh, yeah. I wonder if we should tell that on... I mean, we could do both, but Halloween was insane because I had a video conference which is related to Relic, but I don't want to talk about because it's something that could be potentially big. So that's a little sizzle. But at the time that was happening, I was like, okay, there's going to be maybe one or two trick-or-treaters who show up. So it turns out in Australia, if you decorate your, like, even in the most minute Halloween decor, decorate your door outside area, that's like Moses painting the house red for Passover, but the opposite.
Putting the red over the door,
because that's like when people do show up. And I was like wave after wave of trick-or-treaters, and I had to like run out and get more candy at one point. Like, it was insane. And they were all so polite and adorable. And anyone on Twitter who is saying Halloween is un-Australian can go fuck themselves, because many happy Australian children showed up and got candy. And if you want to talk about cultural imperialism, pick a bone with something else than a fairly innocent holiday that makes children happy in a really miserable world and is a cultural exchange. There.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, Ohio had like one of the coldest ones in recent memory, I guess. I helped a friend move, so I didn't really get to do a lot, but I just remember like we were doing stuff and we go out and I'd be like, oh my gosh, it's so freaking cold. I should have grabbed a coat. Like, my work closed down early because no one goes to a bar on Halloween, like just where it wasn't popular. But like watching all the children just made me feel so bad because I think I turned my heat on. Like, that's how cold it got. Like, it kicked on. I was like, oh, it sounded like a ghost.
And I promise we'll get back on track in a moment, but were you because you're telling me that reminds me of, were you in Massachusetts? I feel like, were you ever in Massachusetts? Didn't you study in Massachusetts, or am I high?
No, I was in Massachusetts. No, last time we talked, I had that interview.
No. I'm saying yes, at Plymouth. Yeah.
Plymouth.
No,
yeah, that didn't go through. In
2000. Yes, and I'm sorry about that. In 2011. There was, in Massachusetts, a Halloween blizzard.
That sounds like something that would have happened in, like, my hometown in Cleveland.
So there was a Halloween blizzard, and my housemate at the time did this amazing outfit, and it was her first time doing body paint. So she was a Venetian doll that was cracked.
Oh,
and it was
God, that's
gorgeous.
amazing.
Yeah. Katie, she's already gorgeous, but like this was just like the outfit. And so there was a lot of body paint involved. And so like that day, our friend Ben had come over and had painted her, sounds really sketch, just kind of like porcelain white, and like did kind of like a cracked thing with it. So it looked like she was like cracked in places. It was really cool. Well, the blizzard rolls around. So we're stuck in the house, not showcasing this amazing outfit of hers. And then the power goes out. And it turns out it's like the worst. No. It's like the worst blizzard in like the Amherst area, Holyoke area of Western Mass in like years. And so like people have to seek shelter, And of course, we're the 5 college consortium. So there's different, like, UMass is like has beds going up where they're sending all the kids, and like Hampshire is doing its own thing. And I was a Hampshire kid living with UMass kids off campus in the Sunderland apartments. So kind of just like right outside of the main town of Amherst. Yeah, it was right next door to Yankee Candle flagship store. Just to paint a picture. Really pretty, beautiful cliffs for hiking. Well, everything is covered in snow, and there's no running water. So my housemate Katie was stuck as a Venetian doll for 3 days in body pain because we just couldn't access water. It was terrible. And she said that after she had gotten it off, she said her skin never felt more exfoliated. Like, it was so smooth. So
oh my god, this could be so crazy.
It was just insane. And that's just what I think of, is that the 2011 Halloween blizzard. It's been a decade.
Oh my god, it's almost been a decade. Yeah.
So let's shift gears back to something sad.
So listeners, when I picked this person many, many moons ago, I did not realize this is the Dr. Death. Yes, that Dr. Death of the famed Wondery podcast, gentlemen. So, because it's only an hour and Maxwell is not going to be here for 20, I don't know how many episodes they did. A lot of episodes. And I did not have time to do their level of research. This is going to be an overview. So accept that for what it is. just accept it for what it is. But we're going to start with a good excerpt from the Hippocratic Oath because, doctors. I will prescribe regimen for the good of my patients, according to my ability and my judgment, and never do harm to anyone. To please no one will I prescribe a deadly drug, nor give advice which may cause his death, end quote. So let's just have that percolating in the back of our minds. So we're talking about Michael Swango. He was born in Tacoma, Washington, but was raised in Quincy, Illinois. He was the middle child of Muriel and John Virgil Swango. Great names all around. So his father, John, was a U.S. military officer who served in Vietnam and actually was listed in the who's who in the government in 1972 to 73.
Okay. Such esteemed rank.
I didn't know he did that, and I enjoy it. Also, probably an alcoholic. When his father returns from Vietnam, he was depressed and then soon after divorced by Muriel. Probably best in that case. So this results in Swango, Michael seeing little of his father and was much closer to his mother. He became valedictorian of the 1972 class of Quincy Catholic Boys High School. And currently that's the Quincy Notre Dame High School. He played clarinet. He was a member of the band. He was raised a Presbyterian even though he attended a Catholic school. Then he goes into the Marine Corps, receiving an honorable discharge in 1980. He moves then to Quincy College, which is currently Quincy University. There's a lot of Quincy's happening.
I noticed that. A quick question. Why was he discharged?
I believe I think it was a health issue or something. Like he made it through basic, almost made it through basic, and something came up and he was discharged, if I remember correctly from my readings. So he didn't actually see any combat. He just moved around. He really wanted to be like his father. So he then attends Southern Illinois University for School of Medicine. And this is really where the red flag mountain's going to start to be built. We're going to be building a mountain of nope, guys, made out of these red flags. Okay. He was a brilliant student at Quincy College. He actually graduated summa cum laude. He had won the American Chemical Society Award, but he's a medical resident and he prefers to work as an ambulance attendant rather than study. So you're just like, what? And he really liked watching and had a fascination with dying patients.
Oh, no, honey.
I told you the red flags start. And most people didn't really notice at the time, many of the patients which he checked on or was assigned to do checkups on, because in residency, you would go around and you have to check on the patients, you follow the doctors and whatnot. There's a lot of training and teaching you have bedside manner and all of this, but his assigned ones, I believe in his closer to the end, they noticed that all of his checkups ended up coding or having almost dying. 5 of them died. So a month before graduation, his lackadaisical approach to studying came up, which is such a great word. He was caught faking checkups during his obstetrics.
So basically not checking in on like sick patients, like just kind of like BSing the paperwork.
Oh, we'll get to what he actually was doing. Yeah, but basically. So it's female gynecology and obstetrics. Many of his actual like cohort was believing he was faking his checkups as early as his second year. So you have, I think for like med school, like the OG one, you go 4 years, right?
I think so.
You go, yeah.
Lost my mom.
It's a while. So chief resident, Dr. Kathleen O'Connor. So like you graduate with your medical degree and then you have to go do residency and then you're a doctor. Like, so then you like earn up. She discovered he would sneak off to the ambulance service instead of applying himself to more important like checkups and like taking notes. She noticed. So this is really what happens. So she's like watching him and he moves from room to room and he seems to be doing all of his like checkups and patient visits really quickly, which is weird. You know, you got to talk to the person.
How do you feel? Does anything hurt? Are you concerned?
Give them medicine. Yeah. So he leaves the room of one female patient. O'Connor checks in on her and learns that he had not examined her at all, not even looked at the IV or did a blood pressure reading. He did nothing. He walked in the room, probably said hi, asked her how she was, and turned around and left.
Did any of the patients, like, were they in a state where they could have, like, the next person to come in, they could be like, actually, excuse me, what the fuck just happened? And be like, he didn't say anything. He, like, complained. Like, did they complain? Did any patients complain about this?
I don't think they did. I think he just came in and talked to them.
And they thought, oh, and that's fine. He must not be concerned because he's a doctor.
Yeah. You know, and this is like in the 80s. So on top of not doing anything, he completed a report on the woman if he had. He didn't check he didn't even fake check the IV. Like, come on. And like the detailed report made the chief resident figure that he was doing either one of two things, faking his findings or plagiarizing them from an earlier report. And as we know, plagiarism is bad, guys. It's bad. You shouldn't be stealing other people's work. The only reason he continued was because one member of his committee voted to give him a second chance. And they needed an ununanimous vote was required to dismiss a student. So really, one person saved him from being dismissed. But they were all like, is he competent to do any of this? He shouldn't be a doctor. He got to graduate a year after the rest of his class on the condition that he repeated his OBGYN rotation and several assignments in other specialties. So they made him do extra work because they're like, we want to make sure like you're going to graduate with our name. This is a really prestigious medical school. So they wanted to make sure that he wasn't going to fuck it up for them and give think about it. If you graduate from a shitty medical school, other people are going to know you did that. And like when you work with them, they're not going to take your work as seriously until you prove yourself. So they're like, we don't want to screw everyone else out who graduated with the class. So he manages to get a surgical internship at the Ohio State University Medical Center in 1983. Sorry, that's Ohio saltiness at Ohio State. In case people are wondering, Ohio State is trying to trademark like the and the Ohio State University. They've tried to trademark other things. It's dumb. So he's supposed to have a surgical internship and then followed up by residency in neurosurgery. So that was going to be a specialty. And neurosurgery, I mean, that's some big fucking bucks. Ohio State has a very, very, I think they built a multi-billion-dollar medical facility recently.
Okay.
Like, so they're a good medical school. And so that's like one of the top in the profession. It's supposed to be like focusing on education and attention to professionalism.
I think this is bad. I don't know if she went to Ohio State. But she was in Ohio for some time. So I think maybe she went there. I don't know.
She could have gone there or Case or some like UC because like there's some good ones in the state.
There's like a period of her life that's actually a mystery to my family. So I don't know if that was part of that or not. Anyways, keep going.
Okay, so because of like their attention to detail, they only accept the best pre-med grads to this program. Quote, given such competition, it didn't take long for some of Swango's shortcomings to surface. The doctor in charge of transplant surgery who oversaw Swango's work from mid-October till mid-November threatened to fail Swango. He didn't believe he was competent to practice medicine, end quote. And that's by writer James B. Stewart in his book on Swango. The same doctor also complained that his manner with patients was brisk and indifferent. So you know what you want with a doctor where they're just
no bedside manner.
No. Imagine, I'm trying to think of imagine like the worst customer service, but it's your doctor.
Oh no. That's not good.
Yeah. On top of it, he was working in the Rhodes Hall wing when nurses noticed that these healthy patients immediately begin dying mysteriously with frequently. And so they're like, okay, that person shouldn't have died, but they're dead. Like they're like freaking out. Every time that happens, Michael's the only intern on the floor. And one nurse caught him injecting some medicine, air quotes, into a patient who then became strangely ill later on. They're reporting to their concerns to administrators, but in good 80s fashion, it's paranoia. It's fine.
Everyone is just sitting on their hands, and it's just really frustrating.
And thinking about it at the time, we're going to go with the sexist approach. Nurses are probably women.
Mm-hmm.
So they're probably like, oh, it's just paranoia. Ladies, it's just paranoia. It's fine. It's fine. And they did do a cursory investigation in 84, and he's cleared of it. But his work is so poor. He's not hired as a resident physician after his internship ends in June, which is good in some regards. In July 1984, he returns to Quincy, again, not Massachusetts, Illinois, and begins working as a emergency medical technician with the Adams County Ambulance Corps, even though he had been fired from another ambulance service. Do you want to guess why?
Because he was focusing on the dying patients and not helping them?
He made a heart patient drive to the hospital.
So someone who's having a heart attack?
Like I believe he was like having heart issues, and he was like, nah, that you're fine.
Oh no.
And the guy drove to the hospital. Yeah. So they like fired him for that, and they're like, it's fine. On top of it, many of the paramedics on staff, so they work in pairs.
Mm-hmm.
Notice whenever Swango prepared the coffee or brought any food in, several of them became violently ill for no reason.
Oh no. What was he putting in the coffee?
I'll get into it. I'm going to go a little deeper. So again, in October that year, he was arrested in August 23rd, 1985. He's convicted of aggravated battery for poisoning his coworkers. He was sentenced to 5 years imprisonment. And then people in Ohio State, because Illinois isn't that far.
No.
We're all Midwestern. And so the people in Ohio State are like, Ohio State admitted that they should have regretted not taking the nurses' claims further. They because it pretty much it keeps coming up. The Columbus Dispatch science reporter David Lordwright, quote, OSU's critics say the university still has not cleared up the mess that was created when doctors and attorneys at OSU Medical Center gave Swango a pass after bungling their cursory and closed-door investigation. Last month, in the response to ABC News, OSU concluded in a written statement that we should have called in outside police authorities to investigate.
Okay.
So Franklin County, which is where Columbus is located in, Ohio prosecutors also considered bringing charges of murder and attempted murder against Swango, but decided against it for lack of physical evidence. And later on, he would be released from prison and found work as a counselor at the State Career Development Center in Newport News, Virginia. Okay. But let's go back to Quincy. So what specifically, he keeps getting fired for these weird issues, but his job with the ambulance corps, he got the job because he did not talk about his past history. And so they're like, oh, this guy is trained as a doctor. It's perfect. So I mentioned they'd get sick after he brought in food. Well, each member of the corps would take turns bringing in treats for the other to share. So it's long hours.
Yeah, you bring brownies. Stuff.
Yeah, and it's kind of nice. They're really popular, especially with the coffee habits. Mid-September, Swango brought in freshly baked donuts, and the 4 other paramedics on duty are thrilled. They're donuts.
Everyone loves donuts.
Everyone loves donuts. So
side note, donuts, not a breakfast food in Australia. Found that out the hard way. What? I brought in donuts for breakfast, and everyone looked at me like I had 3 heads and was like, why are you eating dessert for breakfast? And I'm still bitter about it. Anyways, carry on. I got made fun of at work. Let's not get into it.
That's wrong. So over the next hour, one by one, the entire crew is taken ill with the same symptoms. Stomach cramps, nausea, dizziness, then vomiting. They all have to leave work. What does this sound like, true crime friends?
that he's poisoning them, but I don't know what he's poisoning them with because they're obviously not dying. But Ipecac will just make you vomit. It's not supposed to make you dizzy. It's poison control, essentially. So I don't know what he could be giving them that maybe like a pesticide or a rat poison. I think rat poison would kill you.
Yeah, it does. But some of them you need it in certain doses. Many of the paramedics who were sick realized that Swango had not partaken his own treats.
Oh, so it's like, why aren't you eating? Well, just to feel it. You guys can enjoy, though.
When questioned about later, he answered, quote, "Of course not. I wouldn't do any, about whether he, poisoned them." He's like, "I wouldn't do anything like that." So the following evening, Swango and a fellow paramedic, Singh, were assigned to a routine emergency detail at the local high school football game. You know, in America, it's just standard procedure because sometimes people have a hard hit. You just want it for insurance reasons.
Yeah, it's
and
smart.
Safety reasons.
Absolutely
they have
smart.
them there.
Yeah.
At halftime, Swango said he was thirsty and would like to buy himself and Umsa a Coke. The coworker was like, "Thanks, I'll hold your seat," while he goes off to get 2 Cokes because they're probably not in the truck. They're probably watching the game. After sipping half the cup, Singha begins to feel extreme cramping, and where he's like, he has to have Swango drive him home, and he's in bed with a headache, nausea, dizziness for 3 days. And so he was starting to get really suspicious. No one would take part of any drink or tray of snacks when Swango was about. One afternoon, Swango asked anyone if they would care to join him for a soda in the recreation area. A paramedic, Greg Myers, who wasn't as informed as the rest of the group, was like, "Oh, yeah, I'll go with you." And he knew the soda was going to be coming straight from a can of a pop dispenser. So, they go back and Swango comes back and Myers noticed that the flip top of the can was pulled back because it was Swango opened it for him, which is weird. He asked him, "Why did you open this?" He goes, "Oh, why not?" And so Myers sips it, and within minutes, he's having stomach pains and all the same symptoms. So
did anyone
he has to go home.
Keep the drinks for testing?
We'll get to that because this is how he ends up arrested. So, they're like, his coworkers are hella suspicious about him at this point, and they go to check out his duffel bag that he brings to work. There's a call, so he goes out. They open his locker, retrieve the bag, and inside they found a box of taro ant poison.
Oh,
so you're close.
Okay.
It comprised chiefly of arsenic, which ingested is the same symptom.
How are they
so
not
it's arsenic
dead?
Poisoning.
Because it's such a small dose?
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
So what they did was they set a trap. They decided to put a freshly brewed pot of iced tea on the counter when they knew Swango would be in there alone. And for non-American, iced tea is a thing.
Oh, don't get me
very
started.
Much an American thing.
Well, they've got ice. So they have iced tea in bottles, at the store here in Australia, but you don't usually see it at some cafes. You do. I think it's becoming a thing here, and Australia is.
Yeah.
To just oversimplify, Australia is more like the United States than it is like Britain or like the UK.
Yeah.
So some of the food we eat is popular, or drink is popular in Australia, but it's not huge. Iced tea isn't a huge thing.
I think it's only a thing in the US, really.
Do you want me to call up I don't know where my housemate is, but do you want me to call up my boyfriend right now and just be like, "Iced tea, do you know what that is?"
Yeah. So the paramedics return, and after Swango goes out for another call or something like that, they pour the tea into a container and washed out the pot thoroughly. They brought the liquid to a local coroner. Because remember, these are paramedics, so they tend to transport bodies as well.
Who got suspicious? The paramedics who were poisoned?
Work with him.
Okay.
Yeah, worked with Swango. And the local coroner, their friend, sent it to the nearest FBI test lab for testing, and it did come back that he did poison it. They contact the Adams County Sheriff to search Swango's apartment, and they go into this unkept flat. They discover massive vials, bottles, syringes, medical paraphernalia around a book titled The Poor Man's James Bond, and it was a tongue-in-cheek guide of manual weapons and do-it-yourself murder.
Who wrote this and why?
I couldn't figure it out. So this is pretty much they confiscated, handguns, knives. They found handwritten recipes for poisons and chemicals for it. So that's when he was arrested. In 1989, he's released. He works as a counselor for the state Development Center in Newport News, Virginia, and he was forced out after being caught working on a scrapbook of disasters on work time. You know, make sure it's okay first if it's on work time. They don't like that. So he then goes and works around this time, like late 80s. He meets Kristen Kinley, a nurse at Riverside Hospital. They fall in love and they plan to marry as soon as they get settled. He was employed until 1991 at the hospital until he resigned to seek out a new position as a doctor.
Why wasn't he been arrested for poisoning people?
He was arrested the first time. So he goes to jail for 5 years for the first poisoning.
I missed that.
Gets out. Yeah. So that, like, I kind of bounced back and forth, but the reason why he was arrested, those paramedic coworkers were like, I think he's poisoning us.
Why did they take away his doctor's license? It's so ridiculous.
Who's to say? And the FBI does question several employees on the occasion after his resignation. In 1991, he legally changes his name to Daniel J. Adams, and it tries to apply to a residency program in Ohio Valley Medical Center in Wheeling, West Virginia. Didn't get through. But in 92, he begins working at Sanford USD Medical Center in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. So you have him like moving around a lot, which most doctors, like most people you know who are doctors, they move for medical school and then they tend to stay wherever they are. Like everybody I know who's trying to be a doctor doesn't move this much.
Yeah, it's suspicious.
In both cases, he forges several key legal documents to reestablish himself as a physician and a respectable member of society. So he knows what he's doing isn't correct. He even forges a fact sheet from the Illinois Department of Corrections, falsifying his criminal record. And he's like, oh, it's a misdemeanor for a fist fight with a coworker. And he was in prison for 6 months, not 5 years. And, he was actually got 5 years for felony poisoning because, most states don't grant medical license to a convicted felon because it's completely unprofessional and all of that. He then forges a restoration of civil rights letter from the Virginia governor, Gerald B. Balles, saying he gets the right to vote, serve on a jury, because he gets, he has no other crimes. He's living his good life. He's earning a sterling reputation in Stanford. But in October, he tried to join the American Medical Association, and they give a fuck just a little bit, and they're going through and doing a background check more thorough than the medical center, and they found that mountain of red flags that we've talked about.
Okay.
On top of it, that Thanksgiving Day, Discovery Channel aired an episode of Justice Files, which I've not heard of and I want to find, which included a segment on Michael Swango. So, if you're trying to keep a low profile, that didn't help. So, AMA reports, I think they had a picture, so colleagues are calling in.
Oh no.
They probably think about it, you see it and you're like, oh my God, I know that guy. Because it's not that much time difference.
Right.
And the Stanford Medical Center fires him. Kitty then goes back to Virginia, and she's still suffering violent migraines. All the time they're together, she's having these bad migraines, but she leaves him and the migraines stop. So he's poisoning her too. It's just insane. So after that, the AMA temporarily loses track of Swango, because they're trying to keep track of him because it seems to keep trying to practice medicine everywhere. Mm-hmm. And they're like, this guy is not good. He's causing so many problems. Michael manages to find a place in the psychiatric residency program at the State University of New York at Stony Brook School of Medicine. So that's in Stony Brook. I think that's in upstate New York.
It's on Long Island.
It's on Long Island?
I think so. Maybe. No, I don't know. Oh, okay. I don't know anything. Don't talk to me.
So we don't know where it is. It's in New York State, and his first rotation is internal medicine at the VA Medical Center in Northport, New York. And again, his patients start dying, and no one can figure out why. They're healthy people. Why are they dying? Only 4 months after this, his ex-girlfriend, fiance, Kinney, commits suicide. So, I think there was some issues between Kinney and Michael, and her body might have been wrecked from whatever the fuck he was giving her. Her mother, Sharon Cooper, was then horrified to find out about Swango's medical history and that he's allowed to continue practicing. So they didn't know anything about it. So the mom just goes all full mama bear. So Cooper goes and gets in touch with a friend of Kinney's who is also a nurse at Stanford. And she's like, hey, did you know all this bullshit? And she's like, say what? And so the nurse then alerts Stanford's dean, Robert Talley, about Swango's whereabouts. So then we're going to have a telephone chain. Talley then telephones the dean at Stony Brook, Jordan Cohen. And, he's like, okay, let's get to the bottom of this. So they have the head of Stony Brook's psychiatry department, Alan Miller, question Swango. And basically, he admits he lied about the poisoning conviction. That gets him immediately fired. And this also gets Cohen and Miller forced out because of that. But I mean, you try to do the backup checks, and sometimes, at that period of time, you don't have that ability to do it as much. So,
because the internet's just kind of becoming a thing at this time, right?
Yeah, I think it's becoming more it's the online system. I think is more, and it helps people figure out if you're lying or not. Because it was a lot easier to lie before your whole life was online.
Yes.
So, but Cohen, so the dean of Stony Brook, Stony Brook Medical, or I think he's a dean at Stony Brook. So yeah, he was like, I'm gonna remember what I've learned from the past facilities, and he sent a warning about Swango to all 125 medical schools and all 1,000 teaching hospitals across the nation. So he's like, not on my watch, motherfucker. I've messed up, but I'm not gonna fucking let this motherfucker near anyone else. And this blackballs him, and you cannot, you need medical residency to get jobs in medicine. So he can't do that now. And so now the feds get involved.
Of course.
Because, one, he was working at the VA facility. So that's federal automatically. It's a medical malpractice on a multi-state level the feds are just getting involved. So he basically hides out can't find him until about 1994, when the FBI finds him living in Atlanta, working as a chemist at a computer equipment company's wastewater facility. And the FBI is like, hey, chemical company, you know this guy? Let's see his application. Well, he lied because he has a felony and you have to report those. And so he's immediately terminated. They then get a warrant charging him with using fraudulent credentials to gain entry to a VA hospital. But by the time they do that, Swango has fled the country. Do you want to guess where he goes?
Mexico? Canada?
No, he went to a different continent.
Australia?
No.
Europe?
No.
Okay, well, we're running out of continents. South America?
He goes to Zimbabwe and Africa.
Okay.
So there he gets a job at Mirne Hospital on his forged documents. I just want to know, how good are his documents? We both talked about forgery today. There again, this crazy thing starts happening. You want to guess what the crazy thing is?
People start dropping like flies? His patients?
Yeah. It took them about a year for the poisonings to be traced back to him, and then Zimbabwe arrests him. He's charged with poisoning, and he retains prominent lawyer David Collart, but he escapes from Zimbabwe before his trial date, hides in Zambia, and then about a year and a half later, so we're in 97, he applies for a job at the Royal Hospital in Dhahran, Saudi Arabia, using a false resume.
He's just really
it's just
on the run.
Yeah.
It's a little Catch Me If You Can, but sadder.
Catch Me If You Can
Murder.
With fake doctors and murder. Yeah. So at the same time, VA OGI criminal investigator Tom Valerie is talking to Charlene Thompson, forensic psychiatrist, to help him with the case. And they're trying to figure out where he is, get a psychological profile of him, and trying to figure out why he committed the crimes. Valerie called DA Basic Agent Richard Thompson, who was stationed in Manhattan, to discuss the case. And they're figure out he's lying on his government application to work for the Department of Veteran Affairs, and where he's prescribing narcotics. And this is they've built enough evidence for Immigration and Naturalization Service agents to arrest him in 97 when he's doing a stopover in O'Hare on his way to Saudi Arabia. So he's going from Namibia. I didn't check his planes, but he ended up in O'Hare, and that's because he's on U.S. soil, they can snatch him. He's there just so long and they got him. So basically, there's so much evidence, and they're he's oh, I don't want them to look into Zimbabwe, period, that year or so in Zimbabwe. So He pleads guilty to defrauding the government in March 1998. In July, he sentenced to 3.5 years in prison. And I just love this. Sentencing judges can have so much fun. He's like, yeah, he's not allowed to prepare or deliver food, and have any involvement in preparing or distributing drugs. He's like, we're giving this guy no more chances to poison. The government is using these 3.5 years to be like, let's get all those crimes, baby. So they exhumed bodies of at least 3 of his patients and found the poison in them. They found evidence he paralyzed Baron Harris, another patient, with an injection. On top of it, they found out he lied on the death of Cynthia Ann McGee, patient when he'd been attending while he was at OSU. He said she had heart failure when he killed her by giving her a potassium injection that stopped the heart. So then July 11th, 2000, it's about a week before he's sentenced to be released from prison on fraud. Federal prosecutors on Long Island filed criminal charges. So you guess you were right. It was Long Island. Criminal complaint charging Swango with 3 counts of murder, 1 count of assault, 1 count of each false statements, mail fraud. Don't fuck with mail fraud, man. And conspiracy to commit wire fraud. On top of that, Zimbabwean authorities charged him with poisoning 7 patients, 5 who died. He gets indicted on 17th. He pleads not guilty. How does he get away with, like, I'm sorry, sir, you've already gone to prison for poisoning people. You're gonna say, no, I'm not guilty of all this shit?
He's not. It's like he's smart, but he's dumb at the same time.
Yeah, he's dumb smart.
Yes.
Where he's dumb enough to think he's smart.
I can relate.
So, but September 6th, he's like, okay, I'm going to plead guilty to murder and fraud charges. I think he really just didn't want to go to Zimbabwe because they have the death penalty. And Zimbabwe at this time, I believe, is still under
a dictatorship?
Yeah, I think it's still Mugabe.
I mean, it was until rather recently, as I understand it.
Yeah, it was Mugabe. Yeah, he was from
like 90 years, like 100 years of ruling Zimbabwe or something ridiculous like that.
80 to 2017. So yeah, it's still Mugabe. And like, so if Mugabe like gets pissed enough and he knows it's gonna please his people, so they're getting you off the back about the 200% inflation, he'll do it. I think they got up to 400% at one point. Like they got ridiculously. It was interwar Germany bad.
Yeah.
Where you're just you're just paying for things with blocks of money. So he didn't want to go to Zimbabwe. At his sentencing, prosecutors read passages from his notebooks where he described the joys he felt during his crime. Again, if you do this, don't write it down. That shit can be used against you. He is sentenced to 3 consecutive life terms. He's currently incarcerated at ADX Florence.
Mm-hmm.
And, James B. Stewart, who wrote the book Blind Eye, estimated, like, counting the suspicious deaths at his first medical school, he could be possible for around 35 deaths.
Wow.
The FBI believes around 60.
Oh my gosh.
Which until the new guy came out, Little, the big serial killer who's like an international one who has like over 100. Yeah. That would have been the most prolific serial killer in US
Are you kidding
history.
me? And everyone it's just so unfathomable that from day one, people just sat on their hands or looked the other way or just didn't want to deal with it. And there were so many chances that this could have been nipped in the bud, and it wasn't.
It's the banality of evil. You write it down and you think someone else is going to do something. Yep. You're just doing your job. Yeah. It was featured on Unsolved Mysteries. Like I said, there's a podcast on it called Dr. Death. There's probably more shows at this point on it. I love this. Someone broke down his MO. He really, like, if it was non-patients, he would use poisons like arsenic, slipping in foods or beverages. However, with patients, he occasionally would use poisons as well, but he often did overdoses of the prescribed drug
to make it less obvious.
Yeah. Or wrote false prescriptions for dangerous drugs for patients who did not need them. I know. So that is the tale of Michael Swango, aka Dr. Death. How do you feel?
Not great, Courtney.
No.
Not great.
No, I don't. I think I started reading something on him and I was like, he is fascinating. His picture. Wait, I should share a picture with you. Because he kind of looks, at least to me.
Well, it's probably just like sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I didn't mean to cut you off there. I was just thinking he probably just looks like a recently attractive white guy, and that's why he kept falling upwards.
No, I don't think he does.
Send it in the sky.
Yeah, I'm gonna save it real quick.
He does not look like our fabulous archaeologist friend from the last episode, the pipe.
No, that guy's more attractive.
Oh no. Is he more attractive than the literal mummy above the guy smoking the pipe from last episode in our chat window?
First of all, I think that mummy is very attractive.
Actually,
very beautiful.
Though,
I think
yes, I agree.
They did a great job. Personally. So this guy, I don't know.
Oh gosh,
he reminds me.
He looks like a serial killer.
Cooper.
Yes, he does look like he has the D.B. Cooper vibes. He has the slight smirk and the giant I'm a secretary in the 80s and these are my glasses.
Yeah, I don't know, there's something about him I just don't like. Maxwell, do you want to tell everyone where they can find your wonderful, wonderful content and podcast and things?
Well, first of all, I'm going to say we never found out if iced tea is a thing in Australia.
Yeah, we didn't.
So I guess that's the unsolved mystery that you'll just have to...
So the mystery iced tea is a thing in Australia.
Yes, it is. Mystery solved. As you can find unsolved mysteries related to lost treasure, look up Relic, the Lost Treasure podcast on iTunes or Spotify or what have you. That is my podcast. And I'm also on Twitter saying stupid things at Lost Treasure Pod.
It's great.
Thank you.
So we'll see you guys next week with a new guest.
Yeah.
It'll be exciting.
Probably not me.
Yay.
Yeah.
Bye.
The Mona Lisa, the Hope Diamond, the sarcophagus of King Tutankhamun. Humanity has accumulated hundreds upon hundreds of priceless artifacts and treasures, each one the physical embodiment of a certain time and place. But for all of humankind's greatest achievements, we also kind of suck. For every priceless painting on display in the Louvre, there is another masterpiece stolen and bartered off in an underground auction, or even collecting dust in your grandmother's attic. Each week, Relic, the Lost Treasure podcast, explores the strange, but mostly true tales behind history's greatest lost treasures. If you like unsolved mysteries and true crime, with maybe a little less murder, but certainly a few weird deaths, then you should come along on the journey. Join me, Maxwell, as I dig beneath the couch cushions of history. You can find Relic on iTunes, or stream us at relic.blueberry.net. That's blueberry without the E's. Adventure awaits.
Hey! Welcome to Shamble Fest!
I'm Jess.
I'm Amber, and we are your one-stop weekly shop for news shambles.
We're a weekly WTF and current events comedy podcast. We drop episodes every Monday morning. Tune in.
Shamble on!
Cult of Domesticity. We're available on all podcatchers. Remember to rate, review, subscribe to help spread the word, or just force other people to listen to it. Our Facebook and Twitter are at Domestic Podcast, and our Instagram is at the Cult of Domesticity. We also have podcast merch at Threadless. As well, if you want to support us financially or show some appreciation, we have a PayPal tip jar and a Patreon, which has some pretty great perks. Any topic suggestions, feel free to email us at domesticpodcast@gmail.com. Remember to stay domestic and cult-free.